We are continuing in the secret knowledge with the Purusha and the Prakriti. And he begins, in the mystery of her cosmic ignorance. So.
Okay. In the mystery of her cosmic ignorance, in the insoluble riddle of her play, a creature made of perishable stuff, in the pattern she has set for him, he moves. He thinks with her thoughts. With her trouble, his bosom heaves. He seems the thing that she would have him seem. He is whatever her artist will can make.
The word is bosom.
Bosom, okay.
No.
Bosom.
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 Bosom, yes.
Bosom, okay. And the last line, I thought I didn't get the rhythm there. He is whatever her artist will can make.
He is whatever her artist will can make. Yes. So, again, this is the play that we are experiencing here. In the mystery of her cosmic ignorance. Why, if she is cosmic, is there ignorance? Well, because it's a mystery. It is a mystery why she should have cosmic ignorance and why there should be an insoluble riddle of her. Why should that be? And then she makes of him a creature made of perishable stuff. In the pattern she has set for him, he moves. He thinks with her thoughts. With her trouble, his bosom heaves. He seems the thing that she would have him seem. He is whatever her artist will can make. Well, I take this as the divine play that maybe it's almost a human feeling here, that, and yet it could be her play also. The insoluble riddle of her play, the Purusha becomes a creature made of perishable stuff. And he moves exactly as she wants him to move in the pattern she has set for him. He even thinks with her thoughts, and with her trouble his bosom heaves. Whose bosom? It has to be the divine. What is her trouble? We can understand that he can think with her thoughts, but with her trouble, and trouble here seems to me not to be trouble as we understand it, but challenges, difficulties in her creative mood, in her creation. And so his bosom moves with that feeling, and he seems exactly the thing that she would have him seem, although he is the divine Purusha.
Yeah.
Still is whatever her artist will can make. And that's maybe the beauty of this whole thing, that it's a disguise, it's a play, it's a drama that the divine has created. And we'll see more as we go down now.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still like surprised that it is labeled. I mean, the next page 65, the top four lines I can fully like understand, but I'm still like a little bit puzzled with how he calls in the mystery of her cosmic ignorance and insoluble riddle. So, but still he's calling it the play. So, but somewhere maybe like as we go further, I would get a better understanding of that.
Yes, well, the previous line before that, his pure transcendent force
Hmm.
submits to hers. So he submits even his force to her.
Okay.
And in the mystery of her cosmic
Cosmic
ignorance,
ignorance. Okay.
because this is a working out of evolution.
Yeah, now it makes more sense. Yeah, because he has submitted the force, then it becomes a mixed mystery.
Yes, and
Okay, got it.
and even it's a riddle that's insoluble. You can't resolve this riddle of her play. It's far too vast, far too overpowering, far too mystical. All that she is doing, the divine mother, far too. We can only see a little bit of it. The other day, I read an article by. There's been a whole thing about why people can't go to the samadhi. Very strong thing, very ashram-like thing where one person is very critical. And then this lady whose name is Glory, and she works at a farm that mother created, Gloria Farm, a big ashram farm where a lot of the milk is supplied and everything. When mother moved her father out there, it was more than 10 kilometers away from mother's force. And he was very upset. He wrote a letter to mother, why did you bring me to a place that was out of your force? So he put that letter in his pocket, intending to go and see her. And he's walking and he stumbles on the root of a tamarind tree and knocks himself out. When he awakens, his eyes open, and he sees mother all around that land. He sees her form all around that land. And he's amazed. And then he goes to mother and sees her, and he still gives her the letter. And mother said, yes. She said, I put my force there even before you came. It was there. So her protection was there even before he arrived at the new place. See, and that's what he had seen, and she told him it was a valid experience.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and also I think distance really do not matter. Like her force is everywhere, so.
And we can't really understand the insoluble riddle of her play.
Yeah.
We can't solve that until we are united with her.
Yeah.
Long work ahead. Okay.
Although she drives him on her fancy's roads, at play with him as with her child or slave, to freedom and the eternal mastery and immortalities stand above the world. She moves her seeming puppet of an hour. Even in his mortal session in body's house, an aimless traveler between birth and death, ephemeral, how do we pronounce that? Ephemeral dreaming of immortality. To reign, she spurs him. He takes up her powers. He has harnessed her to the yoke of her own law.
Well, there's much here, so much. Oh, So if we go down to the line, even in his mortal session in body's house, an aimless traveler between birth and death, ephemeral,
Mm-hmm.
not
What does
lasting,
ephemeral mean?
not lasting.
Not lasting. Okay.
Yeah, it's often of the moment. I probably have an exact definition for you, but it's of the moment.
Okay.
And I'll get that for you. Ephemeral. Ephemeral. Lasting for only a short time, transitory, short-lived. So for the moment is correct.
Mm.
Now, if we think of those lines and then go back to a creature made of perishable stuff,
Mm.
we see that Sri Aurobindo's talking here of the divine in mortal form.
Mm.
In mortal form. So that's why he thinks with her thoughts and with her troubles, his bosom moves. He seems the thing that she would have him seem. He is whatever her artist will can make. Although she drives him on her fancy's roads, so she drives him on her whatever she wants to do, at play with him as with her child or slave, to freedom and the eternal's mastery and immortality stand above the world. She moves her seeming puppet of an hour. Now, this word seeming is a very important word here.
Mm.
He's not really her puppet of the hour. He's the divine. He's the Purusha. So Sri Aurobindo uses the word her seeming puppet of an hour. And then he goes on to say, even in his mortal session in body's house, well, this is when the divine takes birth in human form.
Okay.
And he's an aimless traveler between birth and death. He's ephemeral, dreaming of immortality. Ephemeral, short-lived, dreaming of immortality. To reign, she spurs him. And then he takes up her powers. And what has he done? He has harnessed her to the yoke of her own law. What does that line mean? He has harnessed her to the yoke of her own law.
He has caught her by her own law?
Yeah, but it's more profound than that.
Okay.
You have the word harnessed.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
Like to not really get under control, but something like that. To have it.
Well, the word when you put a harness on a horse.
Yeah, you can control it better.
Yes, so he has harnessed her, and this is very interesting. He has harnessed her to the yoke. And what is the yoke?
Like the essence of it?
The constraint.
Constraint, okay.
The word yoga comes from yug, which is a yoke. The yoke that they put over the two oxen when they want to plow the field.
Yeah.
So then they have to have a harness, right?
Yeah.
So he has harnessed her to that yoke, to the yoke of her own law. So now again, we begin to understand so much more about her play and his play. One moment we think he's a slave, the next moment He's controlling her.
Mm-hmm.
And we go on now.
Okay. His face of human thought puts on a crown, held in her leash, bound to her veiled caprice. He studies her ways, if so he may prevail, even for an hour, and she work out his will. He makes of her his moment passion's serf. To obey she
Feigns.
feigns. To obey she feigns. She follows her creature's lead. For him she was made, lives only for his use. Wow.
Now we're getting deeper into the mystery of he and she, which we began on page 63. This whole wide world is only he and she.
Yeah.
The two who are one are the secret of all power. The two who are one are the might and right in things. So now we're seeing how they're working out that play in such joy. So he's ephemeral, not long lasting, and yet he's dreaming of immortality. He has harnessed her to the yoke of her own law. His face of human thought puts on a crown. Yes, he certainly can do that. Held in her leash. So now you see, he has harnessed her, but he's held in her leash. What a leash is. When you put a leash on a dog, you can hold him. You hold him in that leash.
Yeah.
So held in her leash, bound to her veiled caprice. What is a caprice?
It's like changing mood, changing behavior.
Yes, changing moods. Yes, changing moods. I can give you an exact on that, but a sudden, unpredictable change or series of actions or changes. A sudden, unpredictable change as of one's mind, whim, fancy. So all of that is correct. And
so it's unpredictable is what is key here.
Her unpredictable.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, where are we here? Where's unpredictable?
No, the caprice is unpredictable. The veiled.
It's a fancy.
Yeah.
We don't know which way it's going to go. She plays with all different kinds of things.
Yeah.
And he studies her ways. If so, he may prevail even for an hour. And therefore, she can work out his will. He makes of her his moment passion's serf. A serf is a slave. A slave.
Slave, okay.
Yeah. An indentured servant, a slave is good. Slave is good.
Okay.
So he does that. And to obey, she feigns. To feign something is to make it seem real, but it's not real.
Like pretentious?
Pardon?
Like pretentious or fake?
Yeah, she feigns it, she pretends it, yes.
Okay.
And she follows her creature's lead. And why does she do that? Because for him she was made and lives only for his use. So the whole wide world that is he and she She lives only for the Purusha. She creates for him. She does everything for him. And Sri Aurobindo speaks of this often when he speaks of how Mother came to him one day and she said, "I've just received the power of the word." Capital W, word. That means she could create anything. Sri Aurobindo says to her, "Yes, and you will create the greatest religion ever known. And you will be worshipped throughout the world for all time. But we don't want that. We want the supramental." And Mother gave it up at that moment. Gave the power of the word up because Sri Aurobindo said we have to go higher. So he makes of her his moment passions serve, and to obey she feigns. She follows her creature's lead because she was made for him, and she lives only for his use. But then he says, and you can carry on, but conquering her,
then he is most her slave. He is her dependent. All his means are hers. Nothing without her he can. She rules him still. At last he wakes to a memory of self. He sees within the face of deity. The Godhead breaks out through the human mold. Her highest heights she unmasks and is his mate.
So it comes again, this whole passage that we've been reading. Yes, he is the divine, he is the great Purusha, but also he's speaking of the human mold. Also, he uses the word human mold, and before we had that even in his mortal session in Body's house. So the divine, what's a session? Even in his mortal session. What is that? A mortal session is a period
of time.
Yes. So we go now, for him she was made, lives only for his use. But conquering her, then is he most her slave. He is her dependent. All his means are hers. So he has given everything to her. He stands back, untouched, perfect, alone, invincible. All his means are hers. Nothing without her he can. What a line. Nothing without her he can. She rules him still. Well, this is the secret of the dual avatars. He could not have achieved fully the supramental, even sacrificing his human body into the earth to put the supramental there. But Mother had 23 years after that to work on and out the transformation, how it would be. And in those 23 years, look what she did. You just read the Satram's agenda and you're totally amazed. So He is her dependent. All his means are hers. Nothing without her he can. She rules him still. And then, at last, he wakes to a memory of self, capital S, the divine soul in him.
Mm.
And he sees within himself the face of deity.
Mm.
So he has to, in this grand creation of all the worlds, he has to lose himself to find himself in new ways.
Mm.
And for that, he uses his Shakti to create all kinds of experiences for him, so that this is the divine we're talking about. And this waking to a memory of self, of course, he's the creator. He sees within the face of deity, and then the Godhead breaks out through the human mold. Now, was Sri Aurobindo aware that he was the avatar when he was 5 years old? No.
Mm.
Was Mother aware that she was the mother when she was 5 years old? She was having beautiful experiences as a child, but the shock of taking birth makes one forget or eclipses what one has been in the past. And that's why we have to go through this whole thing of evolution to realize who we truly are. And we may have to go through it through many births. It was interesting that Shraddhalu told us that it's usually 2 years until we take a new birth after we pass away. How quickly that is. In only 2 years after resting in the place where we go to rest, we take another birth. The Godhead breaks out through the human mold. Her highest heights she unmasks and is his mate. So now he gives us that.
Yeah.
Her highest heights she unmasks and is his mate. Now, I want to go on a little bit more here because it's very important.
Till then, he is a plaything in her game, her seeming regent, yet her fancy's toy, a living robot, moved by her energy's springs. He acts as in the movements of a dream, an automaton stepping in the grooves of fate. He stumbles on, driven by her whip of force. His thought labors, a bullock in time's fields. His will, he thinks his own, is shaped in her forge.
Well, we'll look at that. So until the Godhead breaks out through the human mold and she can unmask her highest heights, only then she is his mate, because he experiences everything through her. Until that time, he's a plaything in her game. Her seeming regent, a regent is, of course, a leader, royalty. yet her fancy's toy. What do you fancy today? Well, I'd like an ice cream cone. Her fancy's toy. And he's even a living robot, moved by her energy springs, the springs of energy. Not these springs like this, but like a spring that's bursting out of the earth. Her springs of energy. And he acts as in the movements of a dream. An automaton is what? Automaton is one whose actions are purely involuntary or mechanical. A robot.
Like automated.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he's a robot.
Yeah.
His actions are involuntary. They just happen. Why? Because then he even says he's a living robot. And then 2 lines later, he calls him an automaton, which is about the same thing, but in different words.
Yeah.
Stepping in the grooves of fate, he stumbles on, driven by her whip of force. Well, we remember now about harnessing,
Yeah.
and the yoke.
Yeah.
And now we see that he's driven. His thought labors as a bullock in time's fields. What does a bullock do? He just labors. He works in time's fields, and in the fields, the bullock is driven either to plow land or to thresh grain. Here, he's like a bullock in time's fields in his thoughts. They labor on. They work. They labor. His will, he thinks his own, is shaped in her forge. What is a forge?
Like shaping it, like something. Something that
a blacksmith has a forge.
Huh. Yeah.
And he puts the metal down on
like
the forge and pounds it.
Yeah.
So I can give you the exact again. Forge.
Like a mold.
A special fireplace, a hearth, or furnace in which metal is heated before shaping. So when one is making, for example, a sword, one has to put the metal in that forge to heat
Give
it up.
The shape.
No, it just heats it up.
Heats it up, okay.
So then he can put it on the anvil with a hammer and shape. So the forge is actually the fire.
Okay.
Is shaped in her forge.
Obedient to world nature's dumb control, driven by his own formidable power, his chosen partner in a titan game, her will he has made the master of his fate, her whim the dispenser of his pleasure and pain. He has sold himself into her regal power, for any blow or boon that she may choose. Even in what is suffering to our sense, he feels the sweetness of her mastering touch. In all experience meets her blissful hands. On his heart he bears the happiness of her tread, and the surprise of her arrival's joy, in each event and every moment's chance.
So, previously we had her fancy. Now we have her will, and then we have her whim. Her will he has made the master of his fate. Her whim the dispenser of his pleasure and pain. So he has sold himself into her regal power. And he's done that for any blow or boon that she may choose. What is a boon?
Blessing, or like a gift asked. Yeah.
Now, then he makes this powerful statement. Even in what is suffering to our sense, he feels the sweetness of her mastering touch. In all experience, meets her blissful hands. On his heart, he bears the happiness of her tread. Tread?
Like shaping it?
No, a tread is a footstep.
A footstep, okay.
I tread the ground of your earth. I walk upon it.
Okay.
So we have her touch, her hands, her tread, and the surprise of the joy that arrives from her, and the surprise of her arrival's joy in each event and every moment's chance. Well, we've already learned that there's truly no chance.
Yeah.
But and again, that seeming that. Okay, so now we look at these lines. So he feels, on his heart he bears. So we go back again. His will, he thinks his own, is shaped in her forge. And his chosen partner in a Titan game, driven by his own formidable power. So this is the divine's own formidable power. And he has chosen the Shakti in a Titan game. Titan here means vast, huge. It's not like the Titan with the capital T.
Okay.
Who's a darker force. Titan, one of prodigious size, strength, or achievement, gigantic, immense. So it's a Titan game. It's an immense game. And her will, whatever she does, he has made the master of his fate. Her whim, the dispenser of his pleasure and pain. He has sold himself into her regal power for any blow or boon that she may choose. And even what is suffering to our sense, even in what is suffering to our sense, he feels the sweetness of her mastering touch. Even this is really difficult because even what is suffering to our sense, suffering or pain, Mother wasn't easy on those she loved so much. She made life rough on them at times so they could progress faster. He might have felt the sting of it. I felt the sting of it. And how could Mother sting me like this? But then I realized it was all for my progress. And so even in what is suffering to our sense, he feels the sweetness of her mastering touch. In all experience meets her blissful hands. So we have sweetness, we have blissful. Have I told you that sweetness is Sri Aurobindo's favorite word?
No, I didn't know that.
And it's also Shakespeare's favorite word.
Okay.
Yeah. So on his heart, he bears that happiness of her tread. And the surprise of her arrival's joy. When that joy arrives, And he's so surprised, he bears it also. In each event and every moment's chance, he bears everything because it's his creation through his creative Shakti. And now we can finish the section.
Yeah. All she can do is marvelous in his sight. He revels in her, revels. He revels in her, a swimmer in her sea, a tireless amateur of her world delight. He rejoices in her every thought and act, and gives consent to all that she can wish. Whatever she desires, he wills to be. The Spirit, the innumerable one, he has left behind his lone eternity. He is in endless birth, in endless time, her finite multitude in an infinite space.
Okay, so there are a few things we have to work out here. All she can do is marvelous in his sight. Whatever she does, it's marvelous. He revels in her. What's a revel?
Like to admire, adore.
It's a little bit more. To revel in something is to really take great joy in it. It can be even
to be in delight.
Yes, I can give you exactly again. Revel is often boisterous festivity, like a spectacular dance. It can also be a spectacular dance performed in processions and pageants. Or number 3, the verb to take great pleasure or delight, and that's what it is here. He takes that great pleasure and delight.
Okay.
He's a swimmer in her sea, and he's a tireless amateur of her world delight.
Amateur. It's amateur. Okay.
Amateur, yeah. Yeah, there were a couple of words there that we'll look at. He rejoices in her every thought and act, and gives consent to all that she can wish. Whatever she desires, he wills to be. So if she desires something, he is going to will it to be. He's going to make it possible. He wills it to be. He wills to be. Who is he? He is the Spirit, the innumerable one. Ranganath tells us there are 2 ways of looking at these things. The one in the many, and the many in the one. The one in the many, and the many in the one. But what has he done? He has left behind his lone eternity. He is an endless birth in endless time. Her finite multitude in an infinite space. Oh my goodness. He is the Spirit. He is the innumerable one. But he left behind his lone eternity. for her, for this evolutionary game, this play. And therefore he is an endless birth in endless time. The divine keeps being born at every second. He's not static. He's not some old man with a beard who dispenses out heaven and hell. He's not that at all. He's within each of us, and he's growing within each of us as we grow. He's growing in the world's difficulties and challenges and its successes. He has left behind his lone eternity. He is an endless birth in endless time. He is her finite's multitude. How can you have a finite multitude? See, these are things that are so mystical and experienced by Sri Aurobindo that he could write down her finite's multitude. So on the one hand, we have a finite, the other hand, we have a multitude. But it's the multitude of her finiteness.
Yeah.
In infinite space, no less.
Yeah.